Before we begin, just a quick disclaimer. You might encounter strong language. Oops. We also want to be clear that the things we say are our opinions and in should no way be taken as medical health or dietary advice. We also are aware that we have certain privileged experiences and therefore we are not able to be representative. And we don't even aim to be representative of all the things that people have lived and felt that we have not.
I'm fat and I happily spend lots of money to look good. So,
I'm fat and I wear form-fitting clothes all the time. So,
Yeah! I like it. I'm fat and I think my body looks luscious. So?
and it does. I'm fat and I really like my photographs. So,
She really does, guys. Like, sometimes I'm like, Pallavi, can you stop looking at your pictures?
I'm fat and for my 62nd birthday next week, a friend gave me this ferocious tattoo on my fat, flabby old lady arm, my fadubada. So,
Oh god, and it is a gorgeous tattoo, guys. It's this green leafy vine. Oh, I'm sure it'll show up on Instagram at some
halfway
point.
across my back too. It's all over the place.
ooh, we're going to
Oh.
put this up on
Yes.
when we're talking about this episode.
Gotta do it.
And now that you've shown it to us in profile and everything, I'm like, I want to do it.
Pallavi recently joined the bandwagon of tattoo getters. With her first two, yeah. I'm fat, and sometimes I take 2 whole hours to get all dolled up and do makeup and shading and curled hair, and sometimes I'm in my PJs with an unwashed face. So,
So, welcome to Fatso, the podcast where we talk about the joys and sorrows of being fat women in India. Heavy on the joy. I'm Pallavi.
and I'm Amaya, and today's guest is Substantia Jones.
Oh my god. I have to try and contain my excitement, but this is really hard when you're meeting someone you adore the way I do Substantia. But let me try and introduce her without too much gushing, and you'll know why we adore her. Substantia is an art photographer since the 80s and turned her lens to fat liberation in 2007 and launched the photo activism campaign called the Adipositivity Project. You can see her work on her website, and it's mostly nude, unapologetically fat people doing things with their bodies, some of which made me blush, still do sometimes, but all of which completely changed my perspective on fat bodies forever. Her website has 11 million visitors. Her images have been exhibited in museums, galleries across the globe, and featured in books, magazines, hundreds of national and international news outlets. She's received several grants and awards for her work, and in 2016, she was profiled in a video piece by the Time magazine. She's recently co-written an article with another favorite of ours, Dr. Kat Posey, on the first 15 years of the Adipositivity Project, and this was published in the Fat Studies Journal. I definitely have to read this.
We both do. Well, I mean, it's my turn to gush, and I'm just going to say that it's hard to summarize what you mean to us here, Substantia, really. I mean, I know that the first time I saw an adipositivity image with a body like mine, I physically jerked away from the phone and like just went scroll. But then I made myself go back and look at that image because I'm like, Amaya, you want to do this whole, fat podcast and fat right shit. You got to look at this stuff, right? And, I did that with every image. And in a little while, I began to appreciate just like what a brilliant photographer you are. I mean, I hesitate to use the term photographer for myself, but I did used to take a lot of pictures when I was younger. I haven't touched my DSLR in a very long time, but I do like to do it, and so I've always find that aspect of it is really appealing, and I take a lot of portraits, and I really started to appreciate the art. And then suddenly one day I was like, fuck, that's a really sexy person, and I was like, shit, wait a second, that's my body. I just saw my body and thought it was sexy. So I feel like it's safe to say that I could not have taken one step along the path to fat liberation if it weren't for you. So thank you, Substantia.
Thank you for saying that, and thank you for following that path, because that's the way it happens. That's the way it's intended to be used, and that's the way it happened from me. Before years ago, in fact, I just told this story on BBC Radio, that when I first got my first digital camera, I was sitting in a chair with my feet up on an ottoman, mostly naked, which is my regular uniform. And I was figuring out the camera, and I took a shot of my very fat legs, and just testing out the camera. Later, I thought, wow, that's gorgeous. And then I made the connection between what's gorgeous in this image and these are my stems I'm thinking are gorgeous. So the way it worked for you is the way it worked for me, and the way it has worked for many, many people that I hear from. And that makes me very happy.
That's amazing, because I'm someone who's avoided photographs of herself, or had to have them very styled because I wouldn't want this to show or that to show, or. So there's so much power in what you just said, of your having come to this that way. And you did say that this is used in therapy. I mean, I read that in your introduction.
Yeah, I've been told since the beginning, I've heard from eating disorders therapists that they use my images in their practice. I wasn't sure how. Then in 2018, I gave the keynote for ASDA, Association for Size, Diversity, and Health. And of the 250 people in the audience, many, at least half, were in the eating disorders treatment field, therapists and students. And I felt very appreciated, and it adds an extra element to what I'm doing. At first, I thought, are the therapists saying, see, you're not fat, this is fat? But I don't think that's it. I think it's showing fat as something other than what they think it is, as something which can be beautiful and positive. And when I say beautiful, when I use the term beauty, I don't usually mean surface beauty as most people think. I think to me, beauty is more often a core deep thing, rather than what you look like to other people. And it's far more important. But I don't slight people who want to pursue beauty, who want to, as you said, spend hours on the makeup and the hair. And I don't slight people who do that, because it's a personal choice. The pursuit of beauty is a personal choice, just like the pursuit of health.
Absolutely. I got to say, when you talked about taking those pictures, when I used to take all these pictures in college, almost all my friends from college, even if I meet them after 15 years, they'd be like, where's your camera? And I'm like, I don't have it anymore. But they were so used to the fact that I had a camera stuck to my face. And I distinctly remember, I look at pictures, I have all these gorgeous pictures of my friends, and I'm in like 3, right? And I remember myself when someone said, "Come, I'll take the picture." And I'm like, no, there's a reason I'm behind the camera. I don't want to be in the picture. And I used that sentence for years. And I refused to be in the pictures. And now I look back and I'm like, I don't have pictures of myself with these friends. Like, for example, a very dear friend of mine from college recently died of cancer. And it was coming because it was cancer. It wasn't a surprise in that sense. But now I'm trying to find pictures of us together. There are so few. And it breaks my heart. And the irony is, I go and I look at that girl who was 19 years old, and I'm like, girlfriend, you're not even fat.
It's funny. I mean, it's not funny, haha, but I have a picture of me at age 14. And I had been a very thin child, unusually thin. And at beginning at age 12, I started developing, is what we called it, meaning I started getting hips and my legs became, shapely, and breasts. And not only was I not ready for it, for the attention that I got, but I viewed it as fat. I viewed it as negative. I had never been scolded about my fat in my family, but I'd heard a lot of scolding because of other family members and their attempts not to be fat beginning at a very early age, dangerous attempts. But when I look at that picture, I still see a very thin person whose thighs were just about touching, and that bothered me. And I remember spending so much time at that age when I should have been having more fun than I was, so much time focusing on how to sit so that my thighs don't look thick, or how to lay out at the beach so that my belly doesn't look like it's starting to form. And it's really sad. And what you said about not having pictures of you as a younger person because you're afraid of the camera, I've talked to many people for whom that's the case. I've never heard any of them say that they were glad they didn't have pictures. They were all very regretful, particularly when they're not in family pictures or pictures with friends. I mean, you have to look back at that now, I'm sure you do, and think, what was I thinking?
I just hope that there are some teenage girls out there who are diverted from that thinking.
Yeah.
Yes. I think they might have a better chance of being diverted from that thinking now than when I was a teenager in the 70s.
Absolutely.
Now we have, even when I started the Adipositivity Project in 2007, you were hard pressed to find any photos of naked fat women or fat people showing off their bodies online unless they were the butt of a joke or in porn. Those were the two opportunities to see naked fat people who weren't ashamed of their bodies. And now, I mean, you can't swing a cat without finding it online. That makes me very happy.
I mean, I even took pictures of myself naked in lockdown because I got nothing else to do. Great light in my bedroom at the time, and I was like, okay, let's do this, because let me see because I enjoy making people look beautiful in photographs. I really enjoy it. Like, even with my phone, I'm always taking pictures of my friends when we hang out, and very often people like them. And I dismiss it as a phone photo, as not a real photo, but that's a different conversation for a different time. But yeah, it inspired me to actually take those pictures and even show them to some people, which is such a huge deal. And I think about maybe someday posting them somewhere online, and then I'm like, and then I quickly change the subject.
Why not? Change your name to something ridiculous like Substantia Jones and do it.
And I'm not sure Substantia remembers, but I have sent her some photographs like that.
I wasn't going to mention it, but I remember you very well because you had, this was so long. Do you know how long ago it was?
This was 2016.
Okay.
8 years.
Okay. You had all the foundation there, and I thought, oh, she's going to be strutting it in no time, because you were working on it. You were trying. You were on the journey. I'm sorry to say journey. I hate that word, but you were, you had all the necessary ingredients. You were just still in the process of cooking it all up.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, I can't tell you how much courage it took to send those photographs. And I've gone back to Tumblr several times trying to look for them to see if I can delete them, to be honest with you. Um, it was an act of defiance for me. I'd just gotten out of my marriage where, for the longest time, my ex-husband kept telling me I wasn't attractive for him anymore. And then I found out the truth, which was different. It was more in his head. He had something because of which he refused to have sex with me. But he took the easy way out. And for almost 7, 8 years, kept telling me it was because I was too fat for him to find me attractive. And it was in 2014 when I saw your photographs and I discovered Tess Holliday and Reagan Chaston and so on and so forth that, I fell in love with my own body, because by then I was suicidal. I was like, I'm never getting out of this trap. And I slowly started falling in love with my body. And in 2016, I separated from him. And a week later, I shot those photographs. And I had to share them with somebody, but there was no one in my life I could share them with. And so I sent them to you. And you responded. And it was so precious for me. I mean,
and I'm so glad I responded.
But I gotta say,
I'm even checking my mail.
Substantia, you're pretty responsive. So, I mean, you responded to us quite a bit on Instagram as well. And I think you once said that one of the pictures I'd taken was a good picture. I might have actually danced an actual jig at the time. P, about your Tumblr photos, feel better about the fact that Tumblr removed all photos involving any sort of nudity, like as a policy some years ago.
Yeah,
I realized that.
I know, but they wanted me, I was using that platform for a couple of my projects because it was good in that people could contribute without having to send me pictures. They could upload their own, and then I would approve them, or a group would approve them. And it was great for that. And Tumblr is responsible for a lot of body love, a lot of fat love. But when they wanted, when they said, you got to get rid of all this, I thought, well, fuck that noise. I'm moving on. And unfortunately, I have never found another platform that worked in the same way that I could do that. But, not everything has to live forever. I had Uppity Fatty served its purpose. Fat people flipping you off, I would love for that to live forever. But, and maybe it will in some form. But so long.
Have you seen those photographs, Mia? Fat people flipping you off.
I'm Googling them as we speak.
Oh, they were fantastic.
Oh, there we go.
I started taking pictures of people flipping off the camera, like after a shoot or one night in a bar. I just went to everybody who was fat. And so I had a little collection of them. And then the day I put it up and I said, hey, everybody, you can contribute to this. Flip off the camera, pretend the camera is, some sizest asshole or your boss or, anybody like that. And I was amazed at how many people, often right there from their desks at work, would just like angrily, and they were feeling it. It was time for fat people's fat fingers. So I loved that, and I'll get back to it, and it'll take up some other form someday, I'm sure.
I'm pretty sure I know what Pallavi and I are going to do on social media around promoting this episode now.
Well, please send those pictures to me, because at some point there'll be a book or something of fat people flipping you off.
100%.
Actually, I think my next project is going to be old people flipping you off.
Yeah. I'll get my mom to do one for you.
Please do. We old people love to flip you off.
My mom's been flipping the world off, I think, since she emerged. And so, yeah.
Oh, I thought you said emojed. You said emerged.
No, I said emerged.
And I thought, oh, what a great word.
Well, maybe we coined it. Let's make it a thing, Substantia.
Nice work.
Okay, so I think we've already touched this a little bit, but I think one of the first things that we love to know is your story of being a fat woman and, you know, how was that phase for you?
Like I said, I was a very thin child, and but I grew up in diet culture, weight loss culture, including in my family. I heard all those negative messages, and also when I started, getting a more developed body, hips and breasts and all, I did hear lots of warnings, like from my mom, my sister, you better watch out. They set me up for being fat. Um, and in this diet culture, we were still doing really dangerous things to our health and taking great risks in the name of losing weight, of staying thin or getting thin, including I told this to an interviewer recently, a very young interviewer, and she was amazed. She'd never heard of a diet pill doctor, but in my town, when I grew up in Virginia, southeastern Virginia, we had a diet pill doctor. He didn't do anything else but prescribe diet pills. And you would go to him, and it didn't matter how big you are. I think I was 17 the first time I went. Somebody at work had given me one of these pills, and I was like, whoa, this is wonderful. And I was still young and reckless and invincible. So I went to this diet pill doctor, and I'm sitting in his examining room, his office. He's at the desk. He's just like, I don't know, looked in my throat and listened to my heart. And now he's at his desk writing out my prescription. That's how this goes. And I remember I'm sitting at his desk while he's writing, and I look over in the corner and I see a big file cabinet. And I thought, I wonder what's in there, because he's certainly not keeping patient information. He's not collecting patient information. So I did that for a while, and I'll tell you, that's really bad stuff. This was harsh, and it was not good. I really regret doing that, but I kept doing it in one form or another, diets and other foolish things, until my 30s. I finally did, and I was up and down. You'd lose weight and then regain it with a dividend, and then lose it with the next diet and regain it.
Yep.
In my 30s, something came out called fen-phen, which was a cocktail of two drugs, the off-label use for which was weight loss. And I read about it in the Washington Post. It was so new, only 2 doctors in the country were dispensing it. I drove 3 hours each way to get this stuff. And it was, it nearly killed me. It did seriously harm a lot of people. I got down to eating so little that I once called the doctor to ask if I would die from never putting food into my mouth, because I wondered. And I smelled like cake, because at one point all I consumed was Coke, no food. And then they started discovering that it was giving people heart valve damage. And so everybody had to, stop taking it and go to the doctor and get heart tests to see. And there are lots of huge lawsuits. And that was my wake-up call. That was when I realized, is this really worth killing myself for? Why am I doing it? And what's weird is I never really had the super bad detrimental body image. I honestly felt okay with myself. I'd been fortunate in that I'd had good romantic relationships, and no one ever made me feel bad about my weight. It was all happening up here. And it was also kind of force of habit. Like, don't examine it, just do it. Just do some weight loss thing, because what you were supposed to be if you were fat is an apologist. You were supposed to be doing something about the weight.
Yes.
The
So
good fatty.
I was responding to that. I wasn't really responding to negative body image. I was, as much as I was just following what everybody was doing. And I rebelled in other ways. I wasn't going to do what everybody else was doing as far as, society or, having babies or anything like that. But definitely the weight loss yo-yo train I got on. Then I'm sorry, I got caught up in the decline, but in my 30s, when I had that bottoming out experience, I decided to never do that again. And I regained the ferocious amount of weight I had just lost by never eating. And but my body found its set weight, and for decades I was at that set weight. For decades it never budged. So I became happier and happier with my body, or really not thinking about it, to be honest. I had a limbo period there for quite a while where I just didn't think about it. I didn't think it was a negative thing, but I also didn't think it was worth fighting for. And I didn't recognize that there was a lot of discrimination going on because I didn't feel like I was experiencing it. So I just didn't think about it until I started until the internet. And I started, yes, I was around before the internet. And I started getting involved with social groups, people who were fat, and people seeking a fat partner, which there's nothing wrong with that. There are lots of different ways to love, and I support all victimless ways of loving. But that led me to being around a lot of other fat people, which I'd never done before. And that's when I started hearing all the horrible stories about discrimination, about implicit medical weight bias, nearly killing people, and sometimes killing people. And that, as I grew more mature, I got angrier and angrier about that. And then coupled with a bunch of things, when I finally did have a relationship with someone who wanted me to lose weight, I was engaged to this guy and lived with him for a few years. And he, and I thought, what am I doing with this person? I've told him I'm not gonna do that. And I'm gonna leave you if you keep talking about it. So I left him. But
Yeah.
I ran. But I learned a lot while I was with him, because this person who also never examined his, and I say he because I for most of my life I dated only men. I married men, and I don't go near men anymore. So I am, I exclusively date women now. But anyway, I don't want to be heteronormative, but that was my life back then. So while I was with him, he marveled at the fact that he said, and he hated telling me, he hated admitting this, but he said, living with you, I have begun feeling more favorably toward fat people. I've begun noticing beautiful fat women in the street. He just softened to the whole idea. And one day he came home with Mode magazine had just come out. And this was a magazine, like a fashion magazine for fat women, but it was mainstream, glossy, found on the newsstands. He was so excited. He brought it home. Look. And I thought, wow, I've done something just with the positive exposure to my fat body. My defiantly, unapologetically fat body has done something to him. And it's kind of done something to me too. So that's when I thought, maybe I need to A, ditch the dude, B, start taking pictures and sharing them widely in some way to get people to look at fat bodies in a way that they haven't before. Not as a joke, not as porn, not that there's anything wrong with any kind of porn, well, non-victimizing porn, but I wanted them to see happy fat people, people who aren't trying to lose weight, people who have made peace with their body, maybe even love their fat body. I wanted people to see that. because I knew it could do something to them. It had done something to my head, so I wanted to do it to other people's heads too.
That's what we do. When people write in and say, how do I stop hating my body? We're like, follow adipositivity, follow Shuglet, and look at it every day. Because like I said, it's literally what I've experienced. I mean, all of this is really new to me because much like you, I did not grow up in a particularly strongly fat discriminatory kind of way. Like my family was mostly chill. They were like, hey, you won't be able to, you'll get diabetes or something. Don't eat so much junk.
That's chill.
No, but I mean, they never deprived me of food. They never took it away from me. They fussed about it, but they didn't take it away from me. And yes, the boys I liked kind of laughed at me and stuff. Sure. But it's interesting that it's not till I came into this space that I even noticed my own programming. Because my general defiance about fuck you, I refuse to be a woman the way you want me to be. Fuck you, I'm going to do what I want, I'm going to wear what I want. Fuck you. It kind of went there, but it also didn't go inside, and it's only with this work that it's gone inside. P.
And the reason Amaya says it's chill is relative to others' experiences. For example, my experience, where I've been exposed to fat phobia since I was 5 years old. I mean, my mother was fat phobic. So I was put on a diet when I was 5 years old. I kid you not. And I went through a very similar phase where I did something called Herbalife, which is this protein powder.
I did it too.
Yeah.
Actually, I did it too. And a much later version that came from Colombia that I can't remember the name of.
And
no, it was not called cocaine, guys. Not called cocaine. If it had been called cocaine, it would probably have worked better.
I know. She's dropping code about something. That's a first for me.
I know. Imagine if that were used as diet culture.
Yeah, it was,
of course,
though.
That too. Yeah.
It was. Cigarettes and cocaine.
Yeah. But yeah, so it was relatively chill compared to that background that I've had where I couldn't do anything right because everything was, flipped the other way for me where okay, you're doing this, but you're not slim. But you're fat. Mm-hmm. And then and I followed a very traditional path in terms of, the Indian family marrying. Okay, well, we didn't have an arranged marriage, but I did go and live with his parents for 2.5 years. And it is the same father-in-law who told him you shouldn't marry her because she's too fat and probably in a couple of years she won't be able to climb the stairs, who then one day said to me, other father-in-laws rape their daughters-in-law and I'm asking you nicely. Same man. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, and I even was told by my husband the first time we had sex that he was embarrassed at the fact that he actually enjoyed himself with me. So that's my background in terms of...
Okay, yes, I get the chill now. Wow, that is so supremely fucked up, and I'm so sorry you had to go through that. That's horrific. I mean, it's truly horrific in all aspects. And, I mean, certainly they deserve some of the blame for putting you through that, but it's our culture that did it to them.
Yes,
absolutely.
We have to put the blame where it belongs. We live in this patriarchal culture. You do, I do, where, women are to be controlled. And part of controlling them is, as Naomi Wolf said, it's not really about changing our bodies. It's about controlling us. And I believe that.
Sorry, we're laughing because I rant about this stuff constantly.
It's one of our favorite quotes.
Yeah, never get me started also never get me started on capitalism or the patriarchy.
No, but I mean, for me, the experience went on at the workplace as well. I had bosses who were fat phobic and who would say to me that, you need to lose weight. Otherwise, how do you expect to go further in your work? And I've had, I've done presentations where, while I was the owner of the project, somebody else, a vendor, was asked to present because she was slim and I wasn't.
Man.
You know, and I'm the owner of the project. I've conceptualized it. I've given her business. So
I'm so sorry that happened to you. And when you both said that that you were happy that I responded to your emails so long ago, to be honest, I think probably the reason I did that and I was more attentive was because I knew you were from India and that things were a lot more challenging there on fat people, because the culture was still, I mean, not for everybody, but for many people in your country, it's very, very difficult to get by, particularly for women and particularly for fat women.
Yeah. We'll take it. It's fine. We'll take
yeah.
it. Something good comes out of the fact that this country is is a giant hot fuck mess.
But anyway, I mean, I just wanted to explain why.
Context of why
The context.
But I mean,
Yeah.
also to give my parents credit that over the past 3-4 years of my journey, I've been shoving the books at them and they read them and they have completely stopped.
Wow.
But dad sometimes will say, "Are you allowed to eat that?" And then I smile at him and I say, "I'm allowed to eat anything I want when I want to eat it." And then he lets it go. And my dad was the one who was really worried about this because my dad is much more conservative than my mom. And he's the one who did Herbalife to say, "See, it works. Now you do it," right? But yeah, my mother never. We talk about fitness. We talk about moving around and doing stuff I want to do. We never talk about weight. We never talk about, "Are you sure you should eat that? Did you eat too much?" It's beautiful. And I have so much, like, this is the thing about my mother, that at the age of 70, she is ready and willing to change her mind. You know, so that's also why I say a lot of this, that there's been unending support, even if they thought I was doing really stupid things, not just in this space of my life, in many spaces of my life. They just sit back and they say, "I think you're being an idiot, but I got you." And I guess that's also what's helped me be so in your face. Like, I've never had anyone in the workplace dare say anything to me about my weight. But then I think about myself and how I walk around like I belong in the world. And I have, even though internally I may be insecure, to everyone on the outside, I look like an extremely confident person. And I mostly am very secure of my place in the world, partly because of my privilege and partly because of my upbringing. And I realized that's the thing. A lot of the times people will say this shit, but they'll never say it to my face. And you know what? I can live with that.
Yeah, I have that situation in my family today where, my parents are gone, but I have my siblings and their kids, and they don't dare say anything to me about my weight. They don't dare say anything to me about being queer, but they do ridicule me behind my back about all of it, about everything. And so I of course hear about it because they also love to trash each other. So I hear about all this stuff. And so my issue is, telling them, kids are listening to you. The kids, my grandnieces and nephews are listening to you being bigots. And if I can't appeal to them to do the right thing, I appeal to them by saying, you are harming those kids by creating little bigots and sending them out into the world where they won't achieve in the workplace, they won't achieve in school because of their bigotry. Do you want to do that to your kids, to your grandkids? You don't know which one of them are going to remember these messages, probably all of them.
Oh, 100% all of them.
They grow up and become fat or discover that they're queer. So when I have the opportunity, I tell the kids, it's not really about my being fat or my being queer or my moving to the big bad city or, my being a Democrat. It's not really about that. It's our issues are old family issues. So just don't listen to your parents.
All good aunts give that advice.
not about this. I just want to make sure the kids know that when they hear this stuff, they should not take it to heart. I remember when I was a kid, my maternal grandmother was the most racist person I'd ever encountered, probably still. And we were taught to respect our elders and talk a certain way to everybody, but we were allowed to laugh at and ridicule my maternal grandmother, even to her face, because my mom knew it was, she was wrong and she didn't want us getting that, that racist message.
Yeah.
So, we were allowed to make fun of my grandmother and ridicule her and chastise her as kids for being a racist. And
It's so important.
her, but it worked on us.
Yeah, which is the point. It's not even necessarily the person you argue with about the stuff. It's somebody in the corner who's listening without saying a word, who
Exactly.
hears another perspective, which is why I actually bother to say anything in WhatsApp groups. But I did want to say, but I absolutely love how you are taking the methods of the fat phobic people, which is you'll never get a job, no one will like you, and use it against them. You will raise bigots who won't get jobs and no one will like them. That's so great.
Yeah, you have to appeal. If you want to change something, you have to appeal to them in a way that will appeal to them. Just telling them being a bigot is wrong, that's not going to work, because that's not going to work on deep dish bigots. But you love your kids, you want them to suffer because you're an asshole, that's what might work. But when you first said that, I thought you were talking about online, and I thought, I like to bat them around like a cat with a mouse and then eat them. I tell them,
I love that.
because they're almost always really ignorant, and I tell them, if you're going to cause me to embarrass you in front of your friends, is that what you want? Because I can do that. I'm really good at it. And then when people call me snarky, I think I'm not snarky. I work very hard to avoid being snarky. I think in snark all the time, but I don't display it because, I don't like, I'm a recovering Southerner. I don't like to hurt people's feelings, but then they remind me, no, I've seen you with, dealing with bigots this way. And I thought, oh yeah, that's a totally different thing. All bets are off. Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that.
I am taking notes here.
It's fun and effective.
I love doing exactly this when like someone is being really dumb. And I'm like, listen, are you really sure you want to have this conversation?
Yes.
I am giving you an out right here, right now. We can stop right here, right now, and then we're done. But
I'll
if
count
you
to 30 and you
keep
can
doing this, I will make you cry. So just stop. It's so much fun.
It is fun. It is fun. It's
I mean, and snark, and generally, like, and sometimes I feel bad because it is a little bit of, delighting in the fact that I'm smarter than someone else. But then I'm like, this person I'm not delighting in the fact that I'm smarter than them. It's just that they're an asshole who's too dumb to realize they're an asshole. So, like,
ignorance and confidence very often go hand in hand.
also known as
The recipe for me, batting you around and eating you.
also known as straight men.
Also known as cishet men, yes, white men. But I'll tell you I even unfortunately find it in our own community.
Yeah.
Because it's the reason when I'm counseling a sizist, I don't just call it sizeism, I say sizist bigotry, because that, in just that, using that correct terminology, it automatically plants in their head, oh, this falls under the umbrella of bigotry, and I know what bigotry is, and I don't want to do that. I do the same with ageism, because ageism is so accepted and enjoyed and purveyed and laughed at, even in our community, but it falls also under the umbrella of bigotry. And it also makes so little sense to me. Not that any bigotry does, but do you you want to cease to exist before you get to be old. I mean, I don't get it, how you too are someday going to enjoy being old. And you also fail to think about, I feel like I'm yelling now when I talk about bigotry.
No, yell it out loud. We like to yell on this podcast.
Okay, good. So when you except I've now forgotten you fail to think of it logically. If I'm let's say I'm about to turn 62 and you're 31, which one of us has the most experience and might just be a little bit wiser? It's almost always going to be the 62-year-old.
Oh God.
No, just here's my, I'm going to say my big thing, my biggest pet peeve, which is just rampant in our community and everywhere, but it gets to me more in our community because we should know better, is, first of all, if you know anything about the science of gullibility. Now, if I call you gullible, you're going to recoil and think I've just hurled an insult at you. But our nature gives us a certain amount of gullibility because we need gullibility to jump out of the way when somebody says, there's a car coming.
Yes.
Rather than stand and question and deliberate, but that's the purpose in our vestigial gullibility. So we all have it. However, if you don't temper your gullibility with critical thought, you're going to believe everything everybody says. And oh my God, not only would that be very confusing, but that's how you purvey dishonesty. That's how you yourself become dishonest, by believing a lie and then repeating it. Anytime you're spreading something that you don't know to be fact, that is dishonest because you could be wrong. You probably are wrong. But yet we have so many people who, among us, who, if they read it, if they hear it, they believe it. They just automatically accept it. And this is nuts. This is just bananas. I mean, I feel like asking these people, have you never been lied to? Have you never been lied about? We have, in addition to this gullibility thing in us, this is a better example that people know about, the fight or flight response.
Yeah.
We have this natural fight or flight response, but when we're sitting in traffic and our fight or flight response triggers, we can't fight or flight. So what that does is it produces stress. It makes changes in our bodies that cause nasty things to happen to us. So we have to temper that innate vestigial response with critical thought, with logic. It's the same thing with gullibility. We can't get rid of it. We're going to have it, but we have to temper it by putting everything through our logic filter, our critical thinking filter. And I wish more people did that. My life would be a lot easier.
I wish more people had critical thinking filter.
Okay, that's a whole nother podcast.
No, I remember, and this is a bit ageist maybe, but we have a term for this called WhatsApp uncle. So it's a whole generation of people not really exposed to the internet and the good side of the internet, but exposed to random WhatsApps that come to them, which they believe, and they go quoting, and they go with that strength of all of the Indian male head of the family, force behind them, and say, I read this on WhatsApp, so it's true.
May the good Lord grant me the confidence of a mediocre, middle-class, middle-aged Indian man. Give it to me, baby. I would rule the world.
Call them forwarders here back before social media, when people would just blindly forward emails that they put in their funny or naughty or just dumb, or a conspiracy theory. Now, young people love to say, "Okay, boomer."
Okay, boomer, I know. But
This
I say, okay, zoomer to these little young ones who come up with the most nonsensical stuff. Like sometimes there are these. I'm sorry, I'm going to be a little ageist and ranty about young people right now, but I feel like this needs a rant. There's some of these people that I've come into my orbit that are like 25 years old and big social media presence, and so they think that everything they say is important. Now, I'm not denying their experience or the things they've come up with or whatever. But you gotta think a little bit before you open your mouth, and sometimes you don't need to have a comment. I have plenty of comments about all sorts of things, as Pallavi knows, but I tend to not put them out in semi public spaces. I tell a friend of mine, we argue about it, and I'm like, okay, this is a valid stance. Okay, now I can tell other people, right? But this thing, and so I'm definitely ageist towards young people. I totally am. And I find it utterly ridiculous. Even people my age who are like, oh my God, I'm going to turn 40. And I'm like, yeah, what did you think? You would turn 38 after 39? Like, do you not understand how time works? Like, it just befuddles me. And I'm like, you cannot pay me enough money in the world to be 25 again. Fuck no.
I agree. That's it's a difficult thing to live through being 25. I try to be understanding of young people because I was once them, and I was
we were never this bad.
an asshole. I was a complete asshole well into my 40s. So I know how it goes, but I try to be patient because I know where what they're doing is coming from. That doesn't mean I have to like it. That doesn't mean I'm not gonna embarrass them in front of their friends, because it is bigotry, and they have to learn. And I don't mind being that old boomer who's going to teach them a lesson. But okay, boomer isn't cute. I've had people try to convince me that term boomer is something that is not what the term boomer is. The term boomer identifies people born between, I think, 1945 and 1960 or something. But they think that they can co-opt the term and turn it into a pejorative the way they have with so many other terms. Queer, fat, which we have reclaimed all of those. So, it pisses me off, but I try to be patient with the young'uns, mostly because I've been around young people all my life. I've worked with young people. Most of my friends are young enough to be my kids, which is weird. Whenever we, are like 3/4 of a way through a bottle of wine and we stop and say that, it's like, ooh, that's weird. But it's true. But I'm a very immature 62-year-old, so it works.
I mean, what does maturity even mean? Like, I feel like that's another thing, right? Especially for those of us who didn't fall into the certain kind of marriage, child, production line path. There's no ways to define us because we don't have any of those markers. It's not like you haven't slept in 5 years because you have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, right? It's like, no, my life is just normal. You don't know if I'm 28 or 40. So ask me, right?
Since Amia is soon going to say, listen, how am I going to edit this? I have to ask you.
Don't be afraid of me. I'm not gonna. I'll chastise you later, not on.
No. From how much time we've spent chatting with you perspective, but
Yeah.
there is something that I would love to ask you, and I think it's a bit unfair to ask you this because I'm sure you have plenty of stories. But I would really love to know the people you photographed. Is there a story that I would love to hear of, a story that touched your heart, or just something? I'm curious.
So many. There's so many. One time I did a lecture at a college that I wanted to change it up a little and do something different. So I sent emails to all the adiposers asking them for any stories they would want to share to a college audience. And I was amazed. I mean, I often become friends with adiposers, and they often confide in me and tell me things, but I heard things that they never did tell me. They hadn't told me. So it was quite enlightening. And can you tell I'm like stalling because I don't know which to pick, and at the moment I can't even think of any that are appropriate. But I will tell you that I hear a lot of this one poor woman I quote all the time, and I can't even remember her name, but she wrote me and said, I just looked at all of your images, and today is the first day in memory that I've not cried about my body. And when I say I haven't experienced that in my life, I've had to learn it since beginning the Adipositivity Project. I've had to learn it from adiposers and from people who write to me. One story, they're not okay. Okay, I'll tell you two quick stories. One, a woman said when she looked at the photos of her and her partner, she realized, wow, I should not be with this man. And she broke up with him, and it was the best thing that ever.
What?
And I said, I didn't tell her at the time, but when she told me this, I said, I thought so too. But here's a story that I like, and it's, it is sad and unfortunate, but it has a powerful ending. A woman who had a very sizest father said that she was teased with this necklace that she loved, that her father kept, and told her, when you get to this certain weight, when you lose to this certain degree, I will give you this necklace. And I mean, if you really stop and think about the implications of that, it's horrific. This, your parent who's supposed to love you is taunting you with this, this reward for shrinking yourself, for making yourself smaller, of all things. So he died, and she got the necklace, and she wore it in her adipositivity photo.
Yes, that's the ending I was looking for.
Wow.
Yes. I loved it. I've got chills now. It gives me chills because I just loved it so much. A lot of people send kind of code messages to their parents in their adipositivity photos. Not always like that. Sometimes it's a very tender, sweet message. One woman, her mother had died from weight loss surgery, and so in her adipositivity photo, she wanted to have this purse that had been her mother's, that she had always coveted, and it meant a lot to both of them. It meant a lot to her mother, because her mother said, I can't give it to you, because when I lose the weight and get back down to the weight I was when I was a hippie and carried this purse, then I'll want it. And she didn't get it. So the woman included it in her. I'm sorry to end on a downer.
No. We can.
Not
It's
at
not a
all.
downer. It's the
But
truth.
what's positive about it is she, the daughter went on to realize, in part because of this lesson, this unintended lesson that her mother taught her. She went on to, be fierce. She's an activist in another field. And when I see her in pictures being an activist and getting arrested, getting loaded into the back of a police van with other activists, I'm so proud to see her fat ass going into that police van. It makes me very happy, very happy. And at the time I photographed her, she was engaged to a medical student who was schooling his instructors and fellow students, and creating curricula about treating fat patients better, being more ethical toward fat patients, and not harming them. I mean, it's all part of the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. You have to overcome this implicit weight bias that we know you have, because studies have shown that medical people have it. And you have to overcome it if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna save people's lives and not harm them.
It's what Pallavi calls the Hippocratic Oath.
Yes. And a lot of them don't realize, they don't understand. I'm in the process of training my doctor now, and he's the perfect amount of resistant and receptive. He questions and he pushes back a little bit, but just enough to really get me juiced to go, in. And I call him on everything. I found, now that we can see our medical records online, I found that he had in my medical records that I was overweight due to overeating. And I wrote him a long missive. I said, this might seem inconsequential to you. You have assumed something that I've never given you any reason to believe. I think if you thought about it, you would know it's not true. And even though it's inconsequential to you, some other doctor who has access to these records is going to believe it as truth, and it might affect my care. It might endanger my life someday. So I said, I need that taken out. I gave him a list of things that need to be taken out or changed. And he's, he pushes back a little bit, but he understands. And what I love is when they take on my language, my terminology, and they start saying this stuff back to me. Like, I have, unfortunately, we should give a trigger warning here about weight loss, but because of I was hospitalized a couple of years ago with one of my upper GI organs had attacked 3 other organs, and they couldn't remove it because of my age. It was too risky. So I still have this going on. I had a couple of surgeries, but it's still going on. And I've recently lost 40 pounds, which was unexpected. No lifestyle changes, no eating changes. It's, one of my organs is trying to eat the other organs. And so I had to buy, after I got out of hospital, I had to buy a thermometer and a bathroom scale, which I did not have, because I now have to weigh myself and monitor my temperature and my weight for this reason. So when I just recently lost all this weight, I was talking to my doctor about it, reporting it as a symptom. He said, sort of making fun of me, he said, was it unintentional weight loss? Because he was making fun of me because I distinguish between the two. Because a long time ago, when I did unexpectedly lose 20 pounds and I reported it to, a nurse practitioner, I could not get it to register as a symptom to her. It was only something to be congratulated. I'd say, oh, what do I do? I'm worried, I've just lost 20 pounds. And, she said, way to go. And I said, no, you don't understand. I'm reporting a symptom to you. It's unintentional. That keep up the good work. And it was like, brick wall. So now, I correct him at every turn. And, he's, like I say, he's a good combination of receptive and resistant. But I'm training him not just for me, but for all of his patients and all of his future.
It's not a sad story. It's a true story. It's just so much empathy and sorrow for these people who did these things to themselves and do these things to themselves. That's all. And, thank you for sharing. Thank you so much.
Haters like to counsel me, and they say, why do you call yourself adipositivity when you're being so negative? And I was like, am I going to positive you into not being a bigot? I don't think so. There are negative things I'm fighting. So yes, I have to push back against them, and I can't do that with a handful of daisies, you know.
But I love your term adiposers because
Yes.
that's really taking, the word fat and putting it back, I mean, giving it back to people and saying, but they're posing. And,
I mean, the whole thing, yeah, like adipose becoming positive, it's just super, super cool, which you know, so we're not gonna dwell on
I
that.
someone recently sent me a um an academic paper that had been published where the person meant, the scholar meant to write adipose and accidentally put adipositivity, and it wasn't all the peer review didn't, it never got edited out. And I had to laugh. I had to laugh because when I first started, I would feverishly Google adipositivity every day to see what was being said, you know. And every day Google would say, "Are you sure you don't mean adaptivity?" And my dream was that someday I would Google adaptivity and Google would say, "Are you sure you don't mean adipositivity?" That's what I want.
May your dreams come true, Substantia. Okay, I really want to ask you one last question, and then I want to see if you have questions for us. And this is a short one, and you don't have to answer it. But so you said earlier on that all I need to do is make up a name like Substantia,
Mhm.
right? So tell what's the story behind Substantia?
I it's funny because I thought about it for about 30 seconds and made it up, and here it's stuck with me, and today most people in the world know me as Substantia, many more than know me by my real name. But I was, for the better part of 20 years, 25 years, I was a radio producer and host variously. Um, and when you're on the radio, you deal with, especially if you're a woman on the radio, you deal with a lot of stalkers and people who want to get with you, people who want to find out everything they can find out about you. You know, they love it when I've had people call me back when I had a landline. They would find me in an old phone book, and you know, it was scary, it was sad,
If
it was
you're a
weird.
woman anywhere that men think that they have free access to you, in short.
Yes, especially if you are on TV or the radio, because you're coming into their home. There's
Yes.
been a lot of scholarly stuff written about the risk of women on TV and radio as opposed to other forms of entertainment, which like movies, before we saw movies at home. You know, it's different, especially if you're coming into their home on a regular basis, or you're in their earbuds, you're in their head, and it gives people whose thinking is maybe not so clear a lot of opportunity to obsess about you.
Super.
So when I first started wanting to put naughty pictures of myself on the internet, I had these great intentions, but I knew I could not do it using my real name, because you can't merge being on the radio and having naked pictures on the internet. It would endanger me further. So I knew I had to come up with a fake name. So I just honestly did think about it for about 30 seconds. And I liked that Substantia, it couples being of substance, which generally means, you know, having character,
Mm-hmm.
being substantial in mass, which
Mm-hmm.
I was and am. And also the substantia nigra is a portion of the brain which controls a lot of things, including your emotions. And so that's where it came from.
Super
And
cool.
Jones just identified it as a name, as a, you know,
Yeah.
that's such a common last name. That way people would, not think I was a band or something. That's how I became Substantia Jones, and it has stuck with me. Now I wish my mom had the full. In fact, that's another thing haters love to say. They love to say, "So your parents knew you were going to be big fat, so they named you Substantia." And I just tell you,
Well, I mean, my name does mean immeasurable or without
oh,
limits or boundless. And when I was younger, again, people would say, "Oh my God, such a beautiful name. What does it mean?" And I'd be like, "Oh, it means immeasurable, haha, around the waist." And I'm like, "Why you do that to yourself, girlfriend? Like, really? I do not want to be 25 again, really."
well, there's a lot. I mean, I know we're finished, but I just want to say about that. There's a lot on both sides that makes sense about self-deprecation. And
Yes.
I
Yes.
never just dismiss it wholly. But I mean, it's complicated. It's
No, it
complicated.
is complicated. It made me feel in that moment that I had some power and some control. That I'm driving the car, so you're not going to hit me with the car. I'm hitting myself with the car.
I'm going to say
Right?
it before you, or I want to make sure you know that I know.
Yes.
And
Yes.
there's also some great scholarly things written about that in the Fat Studies reader, the original Fat Studies reader, and I can never remember the name she writes under, and she wouldn't want me to associate it with her other name, so I won't. But there's a great piece about that. How do I, as a professor in her case, how do I maintain the respect of my students when I'm very fat? And it was great. I've talked to other people who benefited from reading that, other doctors, for example, who, if you need to command respect, you do have to do something. You have to make some
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
gesture.
No, of course. Of course.
It's complicated.
I just mean that, I mean, we did a whole episode on the subject, but I just mean that it's funny how I still own the name, and I own the fatness, but it comes out in a very much more different way. And the fact that the plain truth of the matter was that I had no words for any of these things. I did feel it was unfair, but I didn't even have the words to stand up and say that. And this is something I may have said 50 times on this podcast, so I'm going to stop.
But okay, I'll leave you with this. You made that joke because you made that joke to get power, and you don't make it anymore because you've gotten older.
Yeah! I'm
Age.
so happy. Aging rocks.
I gotta drop this at the end. Age has done something good to you. It's made you wiser. Oh my goodness, we've just thought of that for the first. Nobody has ever associated age.
I like the way you're telling us. You're preaching to the choir here, Substantia.
Luring you in.
Okay. No, seriously. Do you have anything you'd like to ask us? No pressure.
You have answered my questions about. I did want to ask about what it's like socially. I mean, you told me about what it's like in marriages and in your family. What about outside of that in India? What is it like socially for fat women today? Has it improved?
I think we both have responses to this. I would say for sure it has improved, but then we are also very privileged, independent, fairly, have access to money, and therefore are in those circles where I think people are more polite. I think the sniggering behind our backs still happens. It's still difficult sometimes when you walk into a restaurant, you're not sure whether the chair will collapse under you or, will carry your weight. Clothes are still difficult, so on and so forth. So it's not like society has accepted us in any way at all. It's just that there are more conversations around it, and therefore there are more people who are open to it. I mean, I grew up in a world where I was told either you're that fairy tale princess with the narrow waist, the waist that is just a handspan, or you'll never get married, never have sex, etc., etc. And today I date men who don't have a problem with that, and make me feel beautiful, apart from the fact that I feel it myself. So there is a definite difference in all of this, but I at least have broken out of society in a sense because I choose my friends. I don't really meet family any longer. But when it comes to family, they heard one episode of the podcast and they said, "We're not your audience." So nobody in my family, extended family even, has heard of the podcast or has spoken to me about the podcast in any sort of positive light. So I think what I'm trying to say is it's mixed. I feel there's an opening, but I don't know whether that's because of the position and who I am now, versus somebody who doesn't have the gifts or the blessings that I have. I do not know as
Yeah, I
yet.
think that's the hardest thing about India because we are so vast and we truly contain multitudes, which contain multitudes, which contain multitudes. So it's really difficult to make any sort of generalized statement. And I know it's difficult to make generalized statements in general, haha. But in this case, it's so much worse. But I would say that within the context of our circles and our society, it's a conversation that I know I start with my friends. It is something that I've started saying in WhatsApp groups when I'm like, someone's like, oh, don't talk about this news, it's triggering. I'm like, don't tell me about your weight loss, it's triggering. Even though frankly it's not, but I'm making a point, right? Or I
Triggering for
start, yeah, I'm pushing it at other people I know as well. Like, oh God, I put on 5 kgs, and oh my God, this woman, you should look at her and she says she's fat. And I'm like, do you know you say that all the time? And sometimes people are like, oh, can't I just be like annoyed with myself? I'm like, yeah, sure, as long as you also say nice things about your body, but you never say nice things about your body. So either this is a place you come only to complain, or you don't think nice things about your body. But all that aside, one thing I've noticed that I think is really interesting. One, there is more plus size clothes available online than there have been my whole life. Because when I went to college, I had to wear man's pants, which were very roomy in the crotch and very strange, and made me look like a boy because they also had a boy cut. And the other thing is a lot of the young, small, startup-y, cool, trendy brands, the Zoomer brands, they make it a point to have diverse bodies all the time. Now, I don't know how much this actually translates into diversity on other levels. I don't know if they're just doing it to be woke, like everybody had Black Lives Matter stuff going on in India, like it was a farce. So I don't know, but the very fact that the public spaces that I inhabit have now got far more representation and visibility of diverse bodies is a big deal to me. And I still go to places and I'm like, shit, I can't sit in any of your chairs. So, what do you think?
I'm so the fact that there are many more clothing options for people our size, people bigger, is very important. And I tell people when I was, in my younger days, the only time a fat person could find sexy under things was right before Christmas and right before Valentine's Day. That was it. And there was this ubiquitous black lace catsuit that they did carry around. But I won't mention the name, but there's a very popular plus size retailer that I've been working on them for a long time. Every opportunity, they refer to their clothing is for young people. I kept on them about how ageist that was. They still do allow sizeism in their reviews. So now everything I buy, I review and I say something positive about my fat. I love the way this hugs my belly and gives me a sexy visible belly outline. I love, the way this wraps around my huge bottom. So I work on them and they've never responded in any way except they did take the for young people out of their promos. And I thought, well, I'm just going to strut about that. Whether it was because of me or not, I'm happy. That makes me happy. And I'm just going to keep at them because you have to. They may never thank you. They're not going to negative, but you're helping other people, the people who hear these negative messages.
Okay, this is way over the time limit.
I'm so sorry. I'm very chatty.
Please don't be.
Wonderful. I just wish we could like do this like with a crate of wine. That would be fun. Oh my god.
This is, wow. I mean, unbelievable.
I don't know what we did in our lives or past lives or whatever, but it's just like I feel blessed right now.
You know what amazes me about these people who've been doing this work for a long time?
Yeah.
Like whether it was Lindo or whether it's Substantia now, they have this fount of empathy. You know, it's not just about fat bodies, it's about everybody. It extends, you know, because their empathy is towards anyone who has this sort of messaging come across. And not just about fat, but any sort of messaging. I mean, I feel so humbled in front of them because I realize when I'm speaking to Substantia, for example, I realized there was something I said which was, I think, fatphobic or ageist or something of that sort, which I caught myself. I wouldn't have even been aware of it if I hadn't had this conversation.
That's so true. I mean, but ageism is something I have been fighting since I was very young, fighting for the right to be older. And I'm just like, please fuck off, I don't want to be young. But I mean, I say it as a joke, but it is also true that I find there's so much more value to, you just know your shit, you know? Like, and I mean, it's kind of hilarious, all these cliches you hear about youth being wasted on the young, but it's kind of true. Like, the things I could do if I had that energy.
Yeah, and I can't even fathom the depth of experience that someone like Substantia has working with 800 photographs, right? She says 800 photographs means probably actually 1600 or more,
Yeah.
right? And she's actually worked with those people and said, hey, you know, I mean, whatever, as a photographer, she must have, yes. And with people whose bodies are shamed and mocked and
Yeah.
all of that, and she's brought them out and put them up there, and the world is transformed. At least pockets of the world are transformed because of her work. I mean,
You know what blows my mind is this is work that is pre-internet. Like a lot of these people, it's before you could find your safe community starting anonymously online, before you could do all of that shit. You start this work when you go out there and you literally like, what if you never saw another fat person in your town? How do you start to do this? It just, I'm humbled by the fact that we have the opportunity to follow in their footsteps, that to carry on the tradition and maybe make something more of it. Whew, this is more of a fangirl than a summary, isn't it?
I don't think we can avoid it because they really are. I mean, honestly, people like Lindo, people like Substantia, when I say they saved my life, they saved my life.
Yeah.
You know, Reagan, when I say they saved my life, they did.
Yeah.
I mean, that one conversation with Kat was what got me through 3 years of being in that organization that was so fat phobic.
Yeah.
All I had to hold on to was this one Aussie lady who, or from New Zealand, who just called it all out in the questions she asked me, you know?
Yeah. Well, I'm just glad that we get to have all these ladies on the podcast this season, and some gents. We are trying to be representative.
Would we ever have thought this in Cafe Coffee Day, Maya, when we were...
Not a chance. Dude, even when we made the list for the season, we were just like, put the name. If they say no, they say no. And they all say yes.
Yes!
Such amazing people.
Amazing.
So blessed. Like, it's corny as fuck, but it's still true.
And we actually have to thank all the people who listen to us, because they're the ones who've made the podcast happen. And they're the ones who've got all of these people to listen to as a reward, I would say. But yeah, I shall stop.
I think they're the ones who made us keep going. They're the ones who made us feel like it wasn't total nonsense, madness, waste of time. So that's the thing. So we love all of you, and none of this would happen without you. So thank you. And now, before we start, both of us start howling. And that's it for today. As you know, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at Fatso Podcast, or email us at fatsopodcast@gmail.com. You can also sign up for our newsletter, which I swear we're going to revive, and we should have revived by the time this episode goes out. fatsopodcast.substack.com. That's FATSOPODCAST. Our music was composed by Anant, our logo by Yash, and editing today is me, Ameya.